In the 19th century, Karl Marx saw great social economic injustice in European society, amid the skyrocketing output driven by industrial revolution that expected to bring prosperity to nation. Marx observed that the production system of the time reduced humans to nothing more than just factory machines owned by others. And like machines, they received no share of goods they produced. The moment goods were produced, they flowed directly to a banquet table of wealthy. Witnessing this, Marx wrote injustice theory of distribution within capitalism in Western Europe. In his book Das Kapital, that written together with his friend Friedrich Engels, they raised the critical question: who is truly entitled to enjoy these goods, the manual laborers or the wealthy owner of capital? This conflict also fueled Marx's critique of earlier greatest economists such as Adam Smith and David Ricardo. According to Marx, they failed to understand fair distribution of goods. Smith and Ricardo argued that the value of a good came from the labor performed to obtain it. However, they didn't see capitalist profit as exploitation, but instead justified it as the part of value distribution. But before we dive deeper into the problem of value distribution, one question must be asked: what is the true determinant of value itself? Is it determined by labor or by utility instead? If value is determined by labor, as Marx said, why should the capitalist who does not labor be entitled to value? Or is value actually determined by utility rather than labor? Then why is what is useful, even essential to life, less valuable than diamonds? If there is an answer to this water-diamond paradox, watch this video till the end.
You will perceive that the number of people of whose industry a part, though but a small part, has been employed in procuring him this accommodation exceeds all computation.
Let's begin with Adam Smith. According to Smith, in The Wealth of Nations, in primitive societies, the value of goods was determined by direct labor embedded within them. If making bow takes twice as long as making spear, the bow is worth twice the spear. If making shoes is twice as difficult as making clothes, then the shoes are more valuable twice. If coal miners work under harsher conditions compared to builders, then mining labor carries greater value. In essence, Smith's theory states the real price of everything is the toil and trouble of acquiring it. As societies became more advanced, with the division of labor, individuals no longer produced goods entirely by themselves. Instead, work was divided into simpler tasks within manufacturing. With the emergence of tool, machine, and capital provided by the capitalists, and with land owned privately, value was no longer determined purely by labor. This was because production result had to be distributed into three components: wages for worker, profit for capital owner, and rent for land owner. But David Ricardo found Smith's theory somewhat confusing, so he attempted to refine it. According to Ricardo, 100% of value comes from labor. Wages, profit, and rent were simply the distribution of value, not its source. Wages clearly arise from the labor of workers themselves. Wages are set only at the minimum subsistence level required for a worker to survive. If wages rise too high, over time workers will live more comfortably, have more children, and the increase in labor supply will eventually push wages back down. This idea, Ricardo developed from Thomas Malthus' principle of population. Malthus argued that population grows faster than food supply, so poverty is inevitable. There is a kind of natural law governs. German socialist Ferdinand Sell explained this into the famous iron law of wages. Profit for machine, equipment, and raw materials also, according to Ricardo, originate from stored past labor value embedded in those goods. Capitalists deserve profit as compensation for delaying present consumption and bearing risk if production fails. Rent had its own theory. For Ricardo, land itself does not create a value. Rent arises because increasing population requires more food production, that leading to cultivation of less fertile land. Fertile land produces more than infertile land with the same labor. Thus, rent emerges of marginal surplus between land of different fertility. But this is where the problem arises. Why should capitalists and landowners claim a share when they do not labor? This was karma criticism. For him, the distribution of wages and profit was unjust. How could a capitalist who merely launched on a bet receive enormous profit while workers laboring long hours only receive enough to survive? Capital and land were nothing more than just legal justification for exploitation. They created no value. According to Marx, the value of commodity is determined by labor, but more specific, by the average socially necessary labor time required to produce it under normal conditions with average skill and technology. For example, if one unskilled carpenter spent 10 hours to make a chair, While the average carpenter makes the same chair in 5 hours, the chair's value is still measured at 5 hours of socially necessary labor time. But in reality, workers only receive wages equal to bare minimum living costs because there is iron law of wages. Yet the commodities they produce had greater value than this. The surplus was taken by the capitalists as exploitation. In other words, portion of the workers' labor was unpaid. This unpaid portion is what Karl Marx called surplus value. Here is how it works. Suppose a worker needs 8 hours of labor to earn the daily subsistence wage. But instead of working just 8 hours, the capitalists force them to work 12 hours. The extra 4 hours are stolen by the capitalists. Marx called this absolute surplus value by extending working hours to exploit more labor. Another way to exploit more value is by improving efficiency. Suppose at first workers needed 8 hours to earn subsistence wages. With more efficient production, they now need only 6 hours, but capitalists still make them work 12 hours. The 2-hour surplus hours extracted is called relative surplus value. Efficiency increased, but worker pay remained unchanged. Rent, according to Marx, rent was not simply the result of difference in land fertility. Rather, it arose because the land-owning class exploited those below them. In economic system, landowners had more power because they controlled means of production. They forced workers to surrender much of their production in exchange for using the land. That's labor theory of value. We will explore value distribution from the perspective of utility theory. In addition to labor value, for a commodity to really have value, it must also have utility. Without usefulness, a good cannot generate exchange value in the market. On this point, Smith, Ricardo, and Marx all agreed. Labor determines value, but utility is a necessary condition. If a good loses its usefulness, it loses its value. But the French economist Jean-Baptiste Say argued differently. He claimed that the labor does not create value at all. According to Say, the value of commodity is determined by its utility to consumer or by its scarcity, while labor merely plays a role insofar as it provides that utility. Although Say rely on utility theory, Say still do not abandon the labor theory value. But this utility theory creates a paradox. Why does water, which is vital to human survival, have such low value compared to diamonds? If all diamonds were destroyed, human life will not be affected. But if water disappeared, humanity could not survive. The resolution came from Austrian professor and economic journalist Karl Menger, founder of the Austrian School of Economics. Menger had worked as a journalist, writing economic analysis for newspapers like the Wiener Zeitung. His experience observing real-world market led him to question the labor theory of value championed by classical economists. He noticed that the prices often did not reflect production costs. In his book Principle of Economics, Menger argued, human beings have needs and desires that must be satisfied. Satisfaction depends on cause and effect relationship with goods. Supply of goods is often insufficient to satisfy all desire. Therefore, each unit of good become important, because losing one unit means losing satisfaction. This awareness makes humans assign value to goods. For example, imagine someone living in the mountain near a river and springs. They already use water for drinking, cooking, bathing, and washing, completely satisfied. If someone offers to sell them bottled water, would they buy it? No, they will not exchange their valuable money for something abundant. So water, even though useful, has zero value here. This illustrates the law of diminishing marginal utility. The more of a good a person has, the less additional satisfaction each extra unit provides. Now imagine a woman in the desert wearing a diamond necklace. She's dying of thirst. Someone passes by the bottle of water. Which is more available now, water or diamonds? Of course, she will trade her diamond for water. Why? Because at the moment, the marginal utility of the water is extremely high. Losing water could mean death. So water-diamond paradox arises because we wrongly compare total utility of water and diamonds instead of their marginal unit in specific context. The real principle is goods derive value not from labor, but from utility combined with scarcity. This idea of marginal utility had existed for centuries, found in the writings of medieval thinkers like Thomas Aquinas and developed further by the school of Salamanca in the 16th-17th century. However, it faded as classical economics dominated with labor value theory. Marginal revolution in the late 19th century necessary because there is no continuation from the school of Salamanca to classical economics. Menger used a realist causal and deductive analytic approach. He began from the simplest empirical phenomenon observable in daily life, then built logical explanation for more complex economic behavior. His foundation was the individual human being needs, knowledge, and time as primary cause of economics law, such as price formation, which apply universally across time and place. Menger wrote in the Principle of Economics, I have devoted special attention to the investigation of causal connection between economic phenomena involving product and the corresponding agent of production, not only for the purpose of establishing a price theory based upon reality and placing all price phenomena under one unified point of view. This method distinguished Menger from Jevons and Walras, who relied heavily on mathematical models that soon developed by neoclassical economists, and also distinguished from classical economists who use abstract philosophy and aggregate level theory of price. So, we've discussed consumer goods like water and diamonds, but what about producer goods such as machine and equipment which do not directly satisfy human wants? In Principle of Economics, Menger explained that the value of higher order goods is derived from the value of the consumer goods they help produce. For example, in a region abundant with the rivers and spring, will people buy a water pump? No, since water is plentiful, the pump has no utility, hence no value. But in a city with scarce water, where well must be dug, pump becomes valuable. However, even then, the pump only has value if it has complementary goods. Without them, the pump loses its utility, and therefore its value. Producer goods, including land and labor, are higher order goods, whose value depends entirely on the consumer goods they help create. Menger also emphasized that the value is based on human perception, not objective usefulness. Uranium in the 18th century, it had objective usefulness, but since people didn't know its utility, it had no value. But charms or amulet, objectively useless. Yet because people believe in them, they had value in the price in the market, even if irrational. So what is the function of discussing value? We will cover this in the next video about the core issue of economics, that is scarcity. We will talk about how the price is emerged from value, why the Soviet Union economic collapsed, and how it's still related to this topic. And scarcity itself, we will talk about that. Okay, don't forget to leave comment below and give us feedback so that we can make a better video. And don't forget to subscribe. See you.